So I love that. And I am 100% on the same page. And I want to check an idea with you. It's almost like the atomization of modernity and hypercapitalism has forced this kind of like, you remember like the horseshoe theory of politics, right? Because I very, very similar. At some point, I was a Democrat. At some point, as a teenager, I was a card carrying member of the International Socialist Organization. And at this point, I've come to kind of very similar conclusions. It's like, how do we set up systems so that we can like better facilitate like knowing your neighbor and better understanding what the people in your community need and how you can support them and do it in a way that isn't like a government run food bank that, just ends up distributing like white bread and high fructose corn syrup and, and orange juice, and things like that. Cause I've had this similar experience. And then on the other side, on kind of like the right trajectory, you get people that want, like traditional values in the sense of like, well, who used to take care of like the homeless? It was like the church and local communities. And if someone went crazy, it's like, well, now your crazy cousin lives in the attic and you take care of them. It's like we've kind of like come to depend so much on these institutions that we've kind of atomized away our ability to see each other in this larger kind of meaningfully networked sense. And so it sounds like you're speaking to developing new systems that kind of reintegrate that sense of like community allows us to see what is kind of already natural and already has been there for us for a long time. And us is in humanity.
And it's super funny to not know where to place myself politically on those traditional spectrums
Yeah.
anymore because I can be in Portland at the gathering that we spent time at, and I'm a leftist. I am a hardcore leftist. I am like really, really left. But then sometimes I'm like, I'm so left. I got to the right somehow. And then I'm hanging out with people from rural parts of America who just want to be left alone and they
Mm.
just want to be with their kids and they love God and they love their nature and they don't want it to be touched. And I'm like, wow, actually, these people have a lot of values alignment with the people over here. We actually all
Hmm.
love nature. We actually want to like be autonomous. And I find myself struggling sometimes to weave those worlds together. But I find that Web3 is a space where a lot of those boundaries dissolve because it is about sovereignty, it's about like choice. Like we actually don't want to be in an authoritarian system where we're being forced into these behaviors. We want to actually be able to choose and opt in. And I don't think that the network state is really like a long-term viable idea. It sounds like a libertarian fantasy to me. I don't think it actually is going to work. But the idea of being able to have like values aligned groups of people where if you don't align with the governance of that space, you can opt out and you can go to another space where you do align with those values. Because having this single hegemonic government, I actually believe that the founders of America had a broader vision of sovereignty than what ended up becoming the federal government. And Thomas Jefferson actually wrote extensively about this idea called a ward republic. And the idea was that the republic should actually be made up of villages, and all governance authority should actually be nested at the village scale. And this is still somewhat true. If you go to Vermont, it's one of the only states that's preserved this. They actually had it even before they joined the Union. They make all of their decisions through these kind of like open meetings where the legislative agenda for the state for the year is set through just dialogue of people in a town hall. And so it's this kind of direct democracy. And so Jefferson believed that if you had any level of representation beyond where people are actually in direct communication and relationship with each other, you're going to end up with a ruling class that is very similar to a monarchy. And it's just going to be a monarchy that you get to like cast a kind of pretend vote for every 4 years. And I feel like that's where we have ended up is we have two parties that are really one party that are united when it matters around systems of power. And we feel like we have agency or sovereignty or we live in a democracy, but we don't. And so to take that power back requires us to relocate power at the most fundamental local level. And in order to do that, we need to not see each other as enemies. And we need to realize that there actually are values that do link the left and the right, and that we should have it. It's only when we are forced to compete with each other for the levers of power over each other that those ideological differences mean anything. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, yeah, that guy down the street, he believes in Krishna, and that guy over there, he believes in Buddha, and that lady over there, she's a Christian grandma. Like, otherwise, it's just differences of opinion. Like, it's only when we're wielding mechanisms of power that dominate other humans that we are in a fight with each other over those ideologies. And so, by relocalizing the mechanisms of power so that it's not like power over, I think we can actually start to be in solidarity relationships with each other, even across political differences.